A primary school in Hampshire says it will have to cut a class from September because of funding pressures. Hambledon Primary School has fewer than 100 pupils and only 5 classes. It's one of thousands of schools across the UK to join a campaign calling on the Chancellor to look again at how education is funded. Now, the government has promised an extra £1.3 billion for schools and says a new funding formula will make the system fairer. But head teachers in Hampshire say it will continue to be one of the lowest funding local authorities in the country. More now from James Ingham.
10 times 8 equals 80.
A maths lesson at Hambledon Primary School. But it's not just pupils working on their figures. The head teacher here is also having to carefully balance his books.
Draw it out if you need to, like you did with the first one.
With a tight budget, he's been forced to cut the number of classes and teachers.
This is our wonderful class of Year R children. Unfortunately, next year we're going to have to combine this sole class of Year R with a class of Year 1 children, so it will double in size.
So that means the budget is going to have potentially an impact on children?
It will do, and our excellent staff here are going to have to work even harder to make sure that doesn't happen.
The bulk of schools' funding is allocated per pupil, but that contribution varies hugely around the country. In the best funded area, Hackney in London, primary schools receive an average of £5,887 per pupil per year. In Hampshire, that figure is £3,763.
Schools in Hampshire and the 31 other least funded local authorities maintain that's unfair. They say recent changes to this funding formula have done nothing to close the gap, with smaller schools like this one hardest hit. So this week they're writing to the Chancellor to spell out what they see as a chronic lack of funding. And they're including an invoice for money they say they're owed.
My fear for any of our schools is if that funding is not addressed, if that shortfall is not addressed, there will be some schools that will be faced with closure or significant restructuring. And we need to make sure that that doesn't happen. And we will do our best to fight to make sure that that doesn't happen.
The government says the campaign's calculations are misleading and every school will see an increase in funding this year. It says money will be distributed using a formula based on the individual needs of schools. But the Hambledon and thousands of others say they must be given the same tools to deliver education as those in other better funded parts of the country. James Ingham, BBC South Today, Hambledon.